Glad to know you're still with us on Early Exchange. Let me introduce to you our guest this morning first before we dive into the issue. And he is Idahosa Osamhanze, who is the VP Femi Wash Limited and, of course, our in-house analyst here at SOUQ News. Good morning, sir. Good to see the latest version of you.
Blessing, good morning. My pleasure to be here.
Good morning. Glad to have you join us.
Femi, good morning, and good Nigeria, Lagos.
Good Nigeria, yes.
I
I wouldn't want to I wouldn't want to rock the boat by asking how you're managing in this period of fuel scarcity. Let me leave that for later. But first, the good news is that NNPC seems to be doing a lot in trying to provide multiple refineries or more than one refinery for Nigeria's crude oil, as it has signed an agreement with African Refinery Port Harcourt Limited to co-locate 100,000 barrels per day refining plant within the Port Harcourt Refinery for ease of other things that they may need. What's your take on this? And let's not forget that the Port Harcourt Refinery, as of December last year, the first phase of the mechanical maintenance was said to have been completed, and it was expected that by now, about 210,000 barrels per day of crude would have been refined at the Port Harcourt Refinery, supplying to Nigerians. What is your take on this issue?
Well, my take is we're learning the road on how to be self-sufficient in terms of refining of our crude, which God has given to us freely, and we have not sufficiently been able in the last 30 years to really invest significantly in that sector and see it really flourishing. And this as a result of bottlenecks of the acts that set up the National Petroleum Corporation, which was supposed to be a monopoly. And now we're trying to break off that monopoly and seeing that we need to have fuel running. So for me, it's a welcome development. It shows that, of course, we're liberalizing that sector. And once fully liberalized, the issues that we currently face in terms of people who have to panically buy petrol and queue, even when they are not necessary, will be over.
All right, let's not also forget that this is not the first time that some refinery would be set up or deals would be signed. There are some modular refineries in parts of Nigeria. There is the Port Harcourt Refinery, the Kaduna Refinery, and the Warri Refinery. And then very recently, there is the Dangote Refinery. But yet, not much has been gotten from them. What are the issues?
Yeah, you see, petroleum refining is not something that is off the shelf that you just get to here. If you look at it from using the Dangote refinery analogy, you will see that it takes a lot to be able to actually produce this product. And because the man who is putting over $20 billion on the ground is not there to play, he's not a joker. He wants to make money as quickly as possible. Don't forget that 50% of that fund is also borrowed. And then, of course, the owner of the fund are looking for it. So as a businessman, he will be like, let's be in the market as like yesterday. But if it's not happening, it tells you the technicality in the sector is huge. And of course, that also is what may also be facing the government refinery, which of course, again, speaks to the issue of whether you have local expertise to actually address some basic issues and all the challenges that around crude sales, OPEC quotas, and the rest of it, really distorting that market, as it were. Some time ago, we were told that Dangote needed to get some crude to be imported from the United States so that it can have sufficient reserve, so that when the machines start running, there'll be no downtime. So you have enough crude in reserve to continue to process while you wait for more to come, and so that you don't have to break it. But I think we are almost there, seeing that maintenance on the Port Harcourt refinery is almost done, and we're sure that a little work is ongoing there. The Warri Refinery is also working. A shift has moved to Kaduna Refinery. And with the Modular Refinery all working together, the Benin Modular Refinery, though they are producing small, all this put together, we put to an end, really, the challenge about petrol and diesel in Nigeria, as it were.
I would like to start by saying, how would you assess the efforts being made by NNPC to address the issue of local production of oil or crude oil in Nigeria, and also issues related to refinery? Would you say that NNPC is living up to expectation?
Well, I won't want to judge NNPC because, number one, I don't have the technical expertise to be able to do that, to say what is wrong, because I'm not a petroleum engineer. And so we can only look at the administrative part of whatever thing that is happening. I really, for one, would have, if I were given the option of what to do, I wouldn't have even wasted any time trying to refurbish that old refinery, given that the technology that built it in the 1970s are already outdated. So patching work is always a very difficult one to do. The money that we have sunk in trying to refurbish and revamp that refinery, if we have put it to build a new one, which is even bigger, by now we will not be having the kind of challenge that we have. But again, some people feel, okay, why throw it away since we can still repair it? But then you keep putting money, and the thing keep eating your resource. Like you said to us in our own local proverb, if a child is looking for something that will be taking his money, he will go and buy an old bicycle, because every day you will be repairing it somehow.
All right, so the NNPC is done with the African Refinery Port Harcourt Limited. The plan actually started in 2016 when NNPC was advertised for bid proposals for investors to transfer the brownfield crude oil refineries to the areas where you have the refineries already. That is the Warri Refinery, Port Harcourt, and of course Kaduna Refinery. So that's a Port Harcourt Refinery has been signed with African Refinery Port Harcourt Limited. What should be the approach now in getting the other refineries to have private investors? Now, the deal has just been signed. We all know how long it took for the Dangote refinery to actually come into existence and begin to function. So how can some of this be fast-tracked so that Nigerians can begin to have relief when it comes to petrol supply?
Well, you have to be fair to both African Petroleum and NNPC. I don't know the competencies of these people, but I just also I have to feel that it's not another challenge that we had with selling disco to people who were really not competent and had no money to invest in the sector that really had dragged on the issue of electricity distribution for so long, since the sector was liberalized. If they have competence, yes, good. But if they don't have competence, then of course it's the same story over and over again. And I think that's one thing that government must have to factor in, that merit should be the driving force and motivation for everything we do, and ensure that people who are competent enough, who have the expertise, who can mobilize resource and get things sorted, are given the opportunity to run the business, even when they don't necessarily have to be locals or Nigerians. See, because one of the things you see here, everybody look at opportunity and say, oh, I want to play in here. You are ready to buy. You are not buying because you want to solve the problem that isn't there. Probably what you're really looking at is the asset. And this is one problem that, of course, we must have to avoid in terms of looking at it. And so you have people who has a real resource to drive this process. Not that at the end of the day we have to go from excuse to excuse, because at the end you have the license in your hand, you can do so many things with the license. So even when the refinery is not functioning and there are other ways to make money and recover whatever you invest in it, really it doesn't matter. But I think this is a national service. This company must know that Nigerians expect that there be delivery of petrol. They want to see diesel produced here at local cost, and therefore they have to be up the game in terms of investment, because this is a heavy investment project or sector. So they must have the cash to be able to put in this sector to drive the process. I think that's for me what I really say this morning on NNPC and its preparedness.
Now, let's look at the refineries in Nigeria. You have in Warri, you have in Harcourt, you have in Kaduna. And over the years, the dependence on these four refineries have been huge. But now that they're trying to put a new one, not actually new, but in the complex of the Port Harcourt refinery, can we do an assessment of what went wrong with managing our refineries, and then what should be done differently this time around now that NNPC is signing a new agreement with this company for a new refinery plant within Port Harcourt complex? What should be done different? It's been on record that these refineries are performing below 30% when it comes to production and efficiency. What should be done now to improve the production level? And how did we get to that level where the four refineries are nothing to write home about?
You see, if you will ask me, in the absence of data, because I can't say I have raw data to be able to say what has happened. But if we use our everyday experiences to judge what would have happened, you can see and only locate it within the threshold of absence of value. You have a car. You know, every time you need to go to the mechanic, you have to stay there. You know why you have to stay there? And this is a problem, because the car can come incomplete, and then, of course, by the time it's going out not complete. And these are issues that have to do with value system. You see people who drive truck and you're asking them to go and take something, and they put diesel and they get to somewhere along the road, they have to brake and sell off the diesel, part of the diesel, and then call the owner to say something is wrong. So this lack of values in our system is actually what is making us to be where we are. Like I said to a group of people on Sunday, we don't need to be pointing finger, because we are all involved. We all want to cut corners. We all want things to work only for us. And we think only about ourselves alone. And this is the real issue which we face. And until we have to really become morally upright, ethically very strong as a nation, there's so much you can talk about. And this is why you put and vote so much money in there, but you cannot see the turnaround. We've been turning around this refinery for God knows how, for how long now, since the late 90s. So much money has gone into this project, turning it around, and nothing ever turned around. And all we could get is, of course, you have so-called people who import diesel, who import petrol, and then, of course, nobody paying so much attention to what is happening there. So for me, if you say what is wrong, I tell you, there are issues that have to do with accountability, issues that has to do with transparency, issues that has to do with responsibility. Because if we hold people accountable for the resource of state that is given to them to drive a process, and then, of course, they have to come back to tell us that this is what we are supposed to be doing, and therefore we are not able to do it, then there's a big problem. Not even this one that's, okay, yes, though we subsidize it, we also see that this is really a money-making venture. That if the refinery were producing at full capacity, we can be selling petrol. While we are subsidizing for Nigeria and selling to other West African countries, we can still be making our profit to run the process. But you know, some people said for a very long time, until NNPC was completely privatized by the Buhari administration, the audit of that company was pending for so many years. So this is what you see when a system is not open enough, things are not transparent enough, you may not be able to get the real value. But thank God that we have Emilia Kari who is there right now, trying to drive the process and pursuing a lot of transparent and open policy to see that things work. I think all we can do is to give him all the moral support that can ever be mustered so that he can do what is right and ensure that there are accountability, that people that are given resources to do something, they are doing it very, very well. If there's anybody he can learn from today, he should learn from the Minister of Works, Engineer Mahi, how he's driving the entire process and talking to contractor to see that, look, this is about Nigeria. It's either you give us value or you don't participate. So these are the kind of human beings we need right now in the system to drive the process and see that things are working and that value are given. And that for me is what it is. If we have a 10 Umahi, for example, in Nigeria today, there will be a total turnaround.
All right, looking at local refining to make a turnaround from being import dependent when it comes to petroleum products. Now, Nigeria has 25 licensed modular refineries. Currently, 5 of them are operational and 10 are in the various stages of completion. Now, for these 5 modular refineries, how can the NNPC ensure that there is optimal use of them? And even for the others, 25 licensed, 5 working, 10 various stages of completion. But what happened to the remaining 10?
Well, you see, the challenge really and the argument at that time, it was the Obasanjo regime that started the licensing of refinery, modular refinery. And that time that licenses were given to people to go refine petrol, many of them thought that, if we get petrol, we are going to be able to sell in our locality. And then, of course, it dawned on them that the law does not permit them to sell because at that time, NNPC's monopoly is the only person who can sell petrol. And so what they could do was to refine and sell for the outside market. And you're talking about something modular, so which require a whole lot of logistics to be able to see, okay, if I'm producing a small petrol in Benin, how do I transfer that to go and sell in Benin Republic or Cotonou or this place? That makes the business more tedious. And this is the real reason why a lot of them really never go to work, because they are expected that if they got a license, they were going to produce for the local market, which of course really would have been the rationale for modular refinery. That if I have a small refinery who is doing a small capacity and can service Edo State and is located in Edo State, that takes a pressure away from NNPC. But unfortunately, when those licenses were given then, this NNPC has not been unbundled, so they couldn't really sell in the local market because the only institution that the law allowed to sell petrol here in our local market was NNPC. So that was a problem. Could they have sold to NNPC and NNPC redistributed? That, of course, was also not factored into the conversation. I think these are some of the issues. And don't also forget that the part which is, of course, most significant is the technical expertise locally to be able to really process petrol or diesel. This is the real thing for me where the real challenge lies, because you need experts who is going to get the steel running, and then of course you have to pay some more money to do so.
But should that be a problem if a refinery can be set up, whether modular or a major refinery, and that aspect is taken care of? Should it now be a challenge getting the right personnel to make it work?
Well, you see, personnel is cost.
Is it more expensive than the cost of setting up the refinery itself?
Well, you have to, cost of setting up is one of. Personnel is continuous cost. It's running cost that you have to pay every day. Take, for example, of course, you have read in the newspapers that in Dangote Refinery, you have about 11,000 expatriates, and they don't going to earn money in Naira. They'll be paid in dollar. So as your dollar value goes down, then, of course, they have more money for themselves. So this is the thing. So you are going to do these one-off. You are going to be paying it every month. So you have to count your costs before you can have to get to embark on it. So these are some of the issues, really.
But petroleum engineering and every other cost that is required for those who will work in a refinery or a petrochemical facility is a course that is offered in many Nigerian universities. There's even the PTI, Petroleum Training Institute. So how come that Nigeria is still short of personnel with these institutes offering courses related to the petrochemical industry?
Blessing, I don't think we're talking about education system today. So let's focus on
But they are linked. If
petrol.
if the
Yeah,
institutes and the courses that should produce the personnel are there, where is the gap? Or why do we have the gap?
you know, yesterday I was watching a little skit on TikTok, and I saw this guy who was saying, "Look, Nigerians should come and see how school look like, where children in Chinese kindergarten who were training to become hoteliers were actually being taught how to fry things at very tender age. And those who were going to be engineers, they are being structured on how to mold block and set block. This is the real issue. So we know the education in Nigeria is not functional. That needs an overhaul. That what people get is they get a degree and they have a paper to go somewhere to look for work. And because especially when they say university education, it's like a generalist kind of education. You don't really need to have to be anything. That all they teach you is management, ability to manage. So that is what you get. Yes, you have petroleum engineering department, University of Lagos. Then you go to interrogate the children there and see what they are doing. So you have engineering course there. So you can go to the university there and ask what they are doing and see. So they come to class every morning and they teach them theory. And then they set exam for them. And then, of course, if they can recall whatever the lecturer had given to them, they have passed. And after 4 years or 5 years, you give them certificate. At the maximum, you ask them to go and do internship. Many of them, you look, the number of people that are there, even the people who are doing prospecting petrol or who actually have hands-on the field, do not have the capacity to absorb everybody. So only very few of them have the opportunity to actually get to a proper place to do internship. So this is what it is. And those who are doing internship, we monitor them after all. So they come back, you set exam for them, they pass, then you give them a paper and say you are qualified. But doing the work is what the issues are. We have been producing mechanical engineering in Nigeria for how long? How many car factories do we have? Can we produce a generator? So how do you think that the petroleum own will be different from the other ones that we are having? So we are not producing students that are relevant to fields. This is what it is. So you have to be in the field to be able to really practice. How do they teach you mass comm inside the classroom when you are not in the studio to demonstrate it? So this is a problem.
All right. Yeah, I like you're trying to emphasize the disparity between the gown and the town, which is also what you often talk about. But let's look at the issue of this refinery. There's this saying that government has no business. Those who make up the argument feels that if private entities manage some of these businesses, it will, they will do well. A reference is that of Dangote Refinery. Now, the argument on the part of the labor movement is these are national assets that shouldn't be privatized. What's your argument on the need to privatize these refineries?
You know, yesterday I was we were looking at the papers and I was sharing with them. You see, the biggest problem we have in Nigeria is this unionism, where you have almost everywhere, there's union everywhere. Even people who are grinding pepper, they have a union. So, Okada people have union. Those who are doing keke, everybody, there's so much union. And what does this give to you? Is the fact that the unions, to what extent they speak for the rest of their member, is a different kettle of fish. And they are the one who are very vocal, and they are the one talking to government, and they say, oh, we are representing government, and somehow they're asking government to do things that are impossible. Like I saw yesterday when the MSC president said that federal government must implement 600 and
15,000.
15,000 minimum wage, and that's what they want to take. And he's not has ever come out to argue about the gap between the minimum and the maximum wage. How do this fit in, and where would the resources come from to achieve this wage? You see it. So they have a very big weapon. Then, if you don't give us in 24 hours, we will down to, we'll shut down the nation. And when we shut down the nation, then of course it becomes a political issue. So politicians feast on it, and government is trying to reinvent itself, and then they are hoodwinked into agreement that they cannot honor. So this has been how the nation has been run, because everywhere is agency, everywhere is unionism. So people are dragging those processes. But the key question to ask is the fact there are two things that we must have to deal with in this regard. The first is the workers themselves who saying this thing is not supposed to be privatized. They are working there, even when they are not productive, and they are receiving salary. Do their conscience judge them? That's the first thing. So if we are working, you are in a place, you are a worker. Every morning you wake up, you go to work, you have produced nothing. And then you are arguing that that thing that is producing nothing should remain. The question is, does this person have a conscience? That's the first question. When you ask the second question is, why are we saying government cannot do business when government elsewhere are doing business and they are making profits? So which means it's really not government that is not the problem. It is the worker that's a problem themselves. So if the worker are protecting what they have, and they know that this is the source of their livelihood, all these issues we are talking about that are corruption related, which means government infrastructure not to work, will not be there. You see, sometimes when this argument is made and say, oh, government has no business doing business, what it brings to my mind is, so are we all this weak, unintelligent, that we cannot do things well? Is that what it means? Because when you say government has no hand, it means we don't have the competence. That's what it means. Is it that everybody who works in government has no competence? Is that the argument? So I think we must look beyond the issue of competence and see how to focus on what is important for us is the value system of the nation. How do we grow a value system where people who are employed to wake up every day and they have in their hearts the prosperity, the success of the place where they work? They can see value addition, that they are creating value and they are adding value to the system.
All right, let's look at the situation where we have queues return to filling stations across Nigeria. So according to the marketers, the NNPC is to blame because there's been a supply shortfall, which has resulted in the fuel scarcity that we see. But when the subsidy on petrol was removed, now one of the promises that was attached to it was that the issue of fuel scarcity will be a thing of the past, but we've seen that it's still a present issue. What do you think is the problem?
Well, as long as you are importing and you have not grown capacity to build to produce petrol at home, you cannot say with certainty that there'll be no more queues, because the lag, the time between which your stock or your inventory of your stock goes down, and then the time it will take to import for the vessels to arrive is huge time. And again, it's also go back to work ethics, that if the person who is taking the inventory should know what was brought in and what is sold daily and what is left. And in terms of supply chain management, he should know when to put the order so that we don't run out of product before we are placing order or at the wrong time. So if we have people who are working and they are able to understand that, of course, in terms of supply chain management, that you need to understand that, okay, if we look at our inventory and it is going down, and we know that this can only take us for so much, we know when to put in a new order for a product to arrive. In that case, you will not be able to, you will not have this lag, which we are talking about. But I don't think that is the GMD of NNPC that should be doing that. Neither it is the president that should be doing that. Should be somebody who is in charge of inventory, who is the head of procurement. And this process should be seamless in terms of importation, because it's not as if that there are no product or the oceans are blocked and people cannot come as a result of logistics. So these are things that we have to deal with, and I think these are human factors. The people who are given the responsibility to do work, they must ensure that they do those work and they do it very well. And then you can avoid some of all this problem we talk about. But again, you also see that I have been seeing queue, and almost all the places you see people are selling. But you see the pressure. People bringing out car at all costs to want to buy petrol is also another thing. They call it panic buying. And you walk around, for example, in Lagos today, you are seeing a lot of people around the filling station with keg. They have gone to sell there, and they buy the keg and they come and sell it expensively by the roadside. Agency again. So this is the problem. So when you have a rent-seeking state like ours, where everybody wants to take advantage of the other, you find this kind of thing here. But the biggest problem of all is the fact that we also not been able to deal with our transportation issue. If there were mass transits, we have a train system that are working. People don't need to actually necessarily drive their cars. So this will ease the pressure, and the volume of petrol we consume daily. That if BRT, for example, in Lagos are as efficient as they were meant to be, that you get to the bus stop, and at every time you take a card, you enter a BRT and you are where you should be, there'll be no trouble. I enjoy to join BRT, but sometimes you get to the bus stop, there's no BRT. So you can stand there for 2 hours and you are not seeing any BRT coming. And this is a discouragement, and this is why a lot of people are still driving their cars. And if we have such market and we are not exploiting it to make gains for the state, then there's a very big problem. So it's not that people are not willing to join, to drop their vehicles at home and patronize public transportation system. The problem is that you don't get it when you need it. I was shocked to monitor in the UAE that when they put to you and they say a bus is arriving at 6:13 a.m. By 6:13 the bus is there. And they tell you the next bus will arrive at 7 o'clock. So if you miss 7:13, 6:13, then you wait for 7. And at exact 7, the bus will be there. So people can plan their movement around the city. But unfortunately, we don't have such good transportation system that is operational. And it's really a sorry situation.
What do you make of this funny situation here in Nigeria, where what is being said officially or press statements being made, creates a kind of disparity from what is happening in reality? You have the NNPC giving the assurance that you have few products in surplus, and they say there's no plan to increase price. But here in reality, you have some selling at high price, and then you also have some of this scarcity here and there. The interesting thing is NNPC does not even have enough outlets to cater for the demand for this product. So what do you make of this bottleneck, and what can be done to resolve them?
Well, in terms of NNPC and the outlet, I think there are a lot of outlets that we have. The problem is availability most of the time. That is a problem. If petrol are there, people drive in and drive out, you won't even be talking about a queue. So there's this tie that, of course, NNPC is selling at a certain price, and then, of course, all the other independent marketers are selling at a price. So if you want convenience, you go to the independent. But everybody wants to save some money, so we all queue around NNPC. So that's even a problem on its own. Because you can see some filling stations they are selling, but people don't want to go there because they feel that there's a 10 or 15 naira
It's higher.
difference in terms of pricing. And then, of course, everybody queue on the NNPC because it's cheaper. But I don't think NNPC needs to have those plenty of filling station. What we just need is a good mass transit system in the cities. That solves this problem. So people don't take car out unnecessarily. Now people know that when they are going to work, they are going to find a decent means of transportation. Because the alternatives that are available here, they are not conducive.
That's the point I want.
That's a problem. And of course, is unfortunate somehow. I even wonder how the state give them roadworthiness when we can see with our own eyes that the motors or the vehicles are not roadworthy, but they are all licensed to operate in the road. And of course, you decently dressed and you want to get to work. So you find it difficult to patronize those kind of vehicles. So this is a real problem. So we need decent transportation system where people can be comfortable and convenient as they go to work. So that for me is the real issue. Because as long as we don't have a mass transit where people have a trust or confidence in, you will still have people wanting to buy car, wanting to drive their car and the rest of it. So this for me is the real issues, and we need to see how government can invest in this sector and grow it. You see, I keep talking Dubai. RTA in Dubai alone is a revenue earner for government. All they do is transportation, public transportation. You have taxes everywhere in the UAE, moving up and down. Government taxes, and they are making money. So we can do same. We can do same. And I just think it's the will that some people feel that, oh, maybe if you have to say, okay, government invest, a lot of people are having their private car, they are going to get into trouble. But I think at some point, the interest of the greater majority of the people should be what drive government policies.
All right. Let's look at the implication of situations like this where there is fuel scarcity. You find that the prices of goods and services will increase. And sometimes after that situation eases, the prices remain, thus increasing inflation. What can be done to check it? Because if the NNPC has said it was just a logistics issue and it has been resolved, going by what they've said, we expect that the situation eases up in very quick time. What can be done about bringing down prices after the situation is over?
That is it's a problem. You can't. There's nothing that anybody can do. Like they say here, everything that goes up go down. So don't go come down. Once it go up, it's up. You have to bring it down. But I think for people really, it is consumers and buyers really who should demand their service. So if somebody is saying this is how much, you say I'm not buying.
But sometimes do the consumers have a choice?
They should have alternative.
When
So once there are alternative and people discover that they are not selling, then of course they will adjust price. If 21st person come and tell you and say, how much are you selling? You are not buying, and you walk out.
For petrol, for instance, when you go to one fuel station, they're selling at a certain price. You go to most of them at the same price. You may just have to buy.
No. For petrol, I think the price are almost given. What it is that people are monitoring. DPR monitors to see that the pump prices are not above the threshold that is set. So So if we say, okay, you can sell between this figure and this figure for this region, because there's also price discrimination across states. So independent marketers have been given liberty to put a certain margin on what they sell, which is different from what NNPC said. That's what you find today. So if you are in Lagos, you can see NNPC selling at 560 or 565. But if you go to Abuja, NNPC can be selling at 615. That takes care of the logistics from maybe the farm here to Abuja and things like that. So you now see that those independent marketers can be selling like 680 or thereabout. So in Lagos, you also have that threshold between 560 to 615. So consumer can discriminate and say, this is where I want to buy. And that's why you see most of the time where you see queue, you see it at NNPC selling point, because people want to save some money, but the margin is there. That can be done. But I think the one for me which I was speaking to was the fact that there are goods and services, for example, that you are conveyed, and they say, oh, because there's increase in pump price, what happens? The seller says, okay, we are increasing our prices, but when the petrol come to normal, they themselves still keep selling at the rate that they were selling before. But the law of demand and supply can cure that, really. So if consumers start to demand their right and demand service and say, look, I can't buy at this rate, and the man is sitting down there all day and is not selling anything, and nobody will tell him to change price. And I think that is what it is. So sometimes we also need to be able to negotiate and give people reason why they should lower prices.
Interestingly, the situation we have, for instance, in Lagos, is not so peculiar to the NNPC fuel stations. Even the independent marketers, their filling stations, you observe that there are queue. That's just to tell you how serious the issue is. But the question is, what do you think should be the role of the independent marketers, in reducing this bottleneck that you experience when it comes to logistics and, dissemination of petroleum products? Would you also say they are also holding the system to ransom?
Well, I don't think so. Like the proverb in my village, if wall is not falling, goats don't climb it now. So if goats are climbing the wall, it means that it's on the ground. They can access it. So if you're standing erect, nobody will climb. I think the real problem is the fact that we have not been able to deal with the logistics issues, which of course NNPC says is responsible for this current hardship that people are going through to have to queue. So I think the real basic issues is that there are a lot we need to do in terms of investment in logistics, carrying this petroleum product. I don't know why we had suddenly to abandon all the infrastructure that was put in place by the government and with public fund in depots. There are several depots in Nigeria, and there are pipelines connecting this depot. Why is NNPC not using those pipelines? These logistic issues we are talking about,
Trucking system.
trucking system will not be there. So truck only need to drive to Benin because there's a depot in Benin, or you go to Lokoja depot, or you go to the one in Shagam here, and then of course you take petrol. People don't need to come to Apapa to come and be taken from the farm. Those infrastructure had been laid. If they are bad, can't we fix them? So this is up the problem with logistics, because government has invested in piping the petroleum channels. So we just don't have to allow those things to waste. We must find a way to get them working, so that in terms of distribution, we can even have common prices across the federation. But it's because we are ignoring and neglecting the depots, maybe to patronize truck owners. We will not take them off business. They can be moving within regions. So the truck can be distributing within South, some distributing within the northeast, some northwest, some in the north central, and then some in the east. And then we still retain the truck. But rather than allow them even create the nuisance that they are doing and destroying the road infrastructure itself, I think these are things that, of course, government really need to look into and see how to get those basic infrastructure that we're putting with public money to work, and that would be a way to solve the problem maybe once and for all.
Finally, let's wrap up by revisiting distribution from the modular refineries. Earlier, you talked about at the time they were set up, the NNPC hasn't been unbundled. Now, the NNPC has been unbundled. Should the situation remain that they cannot distribute locally, and if the situation is the same, what reform should be done to ensure that whatever development that is going on, there is a law or there is a policy that supports it?
Well, I think maybe I will need to reread the PIA to see whether that bottleneck is completely off, to see that they can. But I don't think that should be an issue today, really. That they are able to produce and they are able to actually circulate whatever thing that they are producing. I don't think that should be an issue with the Petroleum Industry Act. So we just need to see that this refinery, they are functional and they have access to crude. And I think that's the biggest problem as of today.
Access to crude.
Access to crude, because of the fact that they said there were some deals that were done by the previous administration where some of our crude production was sold in advance, and that happens everywhere. I was reading early this morning, UAE entering into an agreement with South Sudan for about 12 billion US dollars to buy their crude offerings. So when you have such an agreement, because you need the money to build your basic infrastructure, then you are obligated to supply them first, and then your local industry suffer. Don't forget that we are still grappling with even meeting up our 2 million barrel OPEC quota daily. So these are the issues that confront that sector. I just do hope that maybe some of those agreements lapse quickly, and then of course we are able to shore up capacity to be able to actually drill and produce the quota that OPEC has given to us on a daily basis. And then we will be able to feed these modular refineries. And then that will go a long way in easing the problem of petrol supply in Nigeria.
All right. Thank you so much for your thoughts and your time on this issue of petrol. We hope that the scarcity we're experiencing now will be something of the past in days to come.
I take NNPC by their word, and I know that in a few days to come, these issues will be over.
Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.